So let's move on then, because you've been at this company 20 years and then suddenly you make the decision to not be there.
Yeah.
So what prompted that?
It was just a difference of view, I think, of where the business was going, how it was going there. And as the sales and marketing director that was there at the time, I was very much feeling like I'm driving the business in a direction. That was how I felt. The business had gone at the time. We were doing 6.3 million in I think it was 2013 to 10.2 million in about 2015. So we were seeing quite good growth, but it felt like it could have been faster, and I felt like I was being a bit hamstrung by but let's be frank, the owner was not giving me the support that I needed. So and this went on for many months. So then ultimately made the decision, okay, well, if I can't deliver what I need to deliver here, then maybe I need to go somewhere else. And really difficult decision to make. But once I made it, 2 weeks later I was gone. So I didn't hang about.
Did you have a job to go to?
No.
That crazy decision.
Well, I mean,
20 years of work and then didn't have a job to go to.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it's crazy, but you could say that I believed in myself enough because of, and when we talked before, my 20 to 30s was, having children and being a young father, and not being very confident. As I went through my 30s and then I did my degree, my confidence had started building, and then I obviously saw what I was capable of delivering, not just me delivering, but delivering with a team of people that I could nurture with me. And then by the time I'd got to that point, I was in a place where I went, do you know what? Even if I do leave here now, I've got enough faith in myself and belief in myself that I'll go somewhere and I'll make a success of it. So I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't done the degree, I don't believe.
It come from that. So you've had a couple of weeks off. You're thinking about a job, and what happened? Did you start applying for jobs, or how did the West Coast opportunity come about?
So I changed LinkedIn on the Friday when I left my previous job, just to say taking some time out. I didn't want to. My initial intention was to take a few months off. I'd been working for a long time. Just felt like I needed to recharge my batteries and I suppose decouple myself away from a business that I'd, lived and breathed for all that time. So, and then Westcoast contacted me on the Monday to say, we've just been given the CSP contract. Would you be interested in coming and running it for us? And I really like the guys there. They would, my sense of humour, my morals, ethics, those sorts of things. And I didn't say yes straight away. Obviously, got to play a bit hard to get. And then I joined them 3 months later. So it was an interesting time, but one of those sorts of times that you look back on with fondness of, I could have taken more time off. I could have, and that's the thing is, I think that when something's right, then you just got to go for it.
And what was the remit? Because I remember speaking to Alex Tafen, and I think you mentioned it at lunch, that when I spoke to Alex, he sort of said to me, Joe didn't give him a job description. He just looked at him and said, you can be the MD and just grow the business with no remit, no nothing. It was just a blank canvas.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
Yeah, it was very similar to that. I think that the thing from my experience of being around and working with Joe is that he's got this entrepreneurial spirit, which he wants to make sure that people have got themselves. So they've got their time, space, freedom to express themselves in the business to deliver what needs to be delivered. And he's always been a massive supporter of that, from both from my perspective and from the other people that I see that he works with. There's a number of directors that have been with the business since early days that are still there and are still being massively supported by him. He's very much a nurturer of talent, and I would tell you one of the stories of when I did a QBR with him, but there was some fruity language. But it was very much a case of I said to him, is there any questions you've got around, what we're doing? And the response was, Mark, I'd love to ask you a question about it, but I don't have a idea about what you're doing. And that's the honesty that he brings to it. It's sort of like, but he's got such a wealth of knowledge around business and I suppose how opportunities can present itself across the group that is Westcoast. That's what he brings to the table. And because he knows his part so well, he doesn't try to show that he knows everything about everything, because of course he doesn't. And then, but he does have a wealth of experience that we wouldn't have after being in the channel I think 1984 it started. So he's immeasurable from a resource perspective to just sit down and have a conversation with.
So what was your remit? You started obviously at Westcoast Cloud. What was the goal?
Just make it a success. That was
right.
it. So when I first started, there was 4 of us, and with nothing basically. So we had to get that ball rolling, which probably took about 3 or 4 months to start getting some partners on board, start getting some processes in place. I had a bit of space and time to understand the business. So in the first 3 months, I wrote a business plan, which was a 5-year business plan of what I felt it could look like. And then by month 9, we were breaking even. So we'd covered the cost of me plus the other 3. And our mantra at the time was this, I suppose because I'd come from a reseller background and not distribution, was we have to run this like we're a reseller, adding value to the customer. And that's still our mantra today, is that if we add value, then we add some worth, and therefore we have to charge something for that. So this isn't about a stack it high, sell it cheap, which is how distribution can be seen. And I think that mindset has changed. When you've got more of the VAD approach, but it's absolutely paid off for us.
And for those of the listeners that don't know Westcoast Cloud, give us a bit of a flavour about what you do and how you sit within the Westcoast group.
Yeah, so typically we sit to one side away from the group because we just look at recurring revenue. We're predominantly Microsoft, but there are some other vendors that we represent with others to follow. I always do a quick snapshot of in numbers. So we'll do £120 million this year. Like I say, 1.3 million seats that are being managed. £30 million worth of Azure consumed revenue that will be part of that as well. About 46 people. So when we were talking about this earlier, from having a £120 million business across 45 people, then obviously we keep our cost base against our revenue in a very good place. I mean, a lot of businesses would be like to be doing £2.5-3 million per employee. So it's very efficient in what we do, but it's also because we focus predominantly on Microsoft. We're in a place where when we say we understand Microsoft and we do it well, we do, because we don't do anything else. We don't dilute it with lots of other stuff as well. So that's been part of our, again, the mantra of, if you're going to do it properly. Don't tickle around the edges.
Now, my view of distribution is, and you mentioned it, and I think it has changed. It's not quite, stack it high and sell it cheap, but I do see it as sort of quite high intensity, office-based role, lots of quoting, lots of pricing, etc., etc. How did that change when COVID happened? Because suddenly you all had to work from home, and I'm imagining the culture was very hard to replicate because it was not such an office-based culture.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the other side of the business because we're in a separate office to the wholesale division. But to be fair to the IT team that we've got running, it was all done and dusted, as in people working from home within 3 days. So for us, it was easy because obviously we're selling cloud services and all of our stuff from the office is all cloud-based anyway. So we didn't need to wait 3 days. We'd go home today and then people cracked on. So I think that what happened in amongst that time was a lot of deals came in that weren't expected to be there. So there was a lot of industries that were affected by COVID, and then you saw a lot of business that was going to be there that wasn't. But then, some of the bigger resellers that are out there started getting some huge government contracts because the schools and colleges now needed to teach. So thousands and thousands of devices were being configured and then sent out to home student. So the numbers didn't suffer because of that; they actually went up. So from a people perspective, if you're talking, what was it like mental health? I think it was the same as it was for everybody. Some people really enjoyed it. Some people didn't like it at all. So from our perspective, and we did talk about this briefly earlier, I think that some of the challenges, especially in that first period, was a lot of people were very worried about losing their jobs.
And now it's almost switched a bit, where the candidate has got a bit more certainty. They're offering a bit more demands in terms of salary and expectations and flexibility. Now, you being in Christchurch and working in Theo, is it?
Yep, Theo Reading.
It's a big journey anyway. So
Yeah.
you've probably someone that's benefited from the flexibility. What's your view on it from now, from a West Coast Cloud's perspective? You know, how flexible are you? What's your view on it? Do you think it works, or are you trying to get people back to the office?
Yeah, I mean, so we had people back in the office in July of the lockdown. So if the lockdown started on March 27th, on July the 1st, people were back in the office. So on a flexible basis. Now, and it all depended at the time whether people had vulnerable relatives or they were vulnerable themselves. So, but typically, you know, there was that 3-month period, and then we've been back since then. So what we've adopted now is a hybrid working of typically in the office 2 or 3 days a week, and then 2 or 3 days at home. So because we've always felt it's really important for people to be around people. And just that, you know, I mean, just those little corridor conversations that people have, or you know, just sometimes just checking in on people. It's really important, you know, and you get to see, you know, what. Obviously, when you're you know, the senior person in the business, you get to hear of all the issues that are there. But just even the little things about, I don't know, someone's lost a pet, or someone's, you know, got a problem with a family member or something like that. Whereas if they're working from home completely remotely, then you can't use your colleagues as a support network for you, which they are there to do if you want them to do. And I think that balance of having 2 or 3 days at home or in the office, it just seems to work a lot better than it definitely does for me as well. Because when I'm in the office, it's all about the people. When I'm at home, it's all about contracts or pricing or strategy stuff or catching up on other things. So almost like an admin type. I'm at home, I've got some peace and quiet. So I do all of those sorts of things then, but it's all people stuff when I'm in the office. So it does work well for me in that way.